portrait against the backdrop of the century. History imprinted on a glossy sheet of paper, an entire epoch in the 10 to 15 format, the era of the known and the unknown. All of them, whether they wanted it or not, were not only the creators of their own destiny, but they also created the destiny of their country. This picture was taken in 1918 in Semipalatinsk. Here is Alikhan Bukikhanov, the leader of the Alash movement. Standing next to him is Turaguli Kunanbayev, Abay Kunanbayev's son. Kokpai Janata is here as well. For a long time, the identity of the intelligent-looking man standing next to them remained unknown. Without advertising it, researcher Marat Abdiashev was searching for traces of the unknown man in all archives, even during the Soviet times. The answer came from Kazan, a file and a photograph, and here he is, back then just a graduate of the Omsk gymnasium. When I got hold of the photograph, it just clicked. I realized that the man next to them is one and the same person. And I wrote an article stating that the man standing next to Alikhan Bukikhanov is in fact Raimjan Marsekov. Raimjan Marsekov, a portrait against the background of the century. Chapter 1. There was a time. This legend could be passed from generation to generation in their family. It happened more than 130 years ago, the bank of Irtysh River, year 1881. A guest of the highest station arrived with his entourage. Crown Prince Nicholas was greeted by the most prominent representatives of the steppe aristocracy. He met with Nicholas. Nicholas came down and inspected each yurt of each unit. Raimjan Marsekov's father was summoned. I'm wholly relying on the archival documents here, because even his descendants did not know that their great-grandfather had been part of the unit. Here is a group shot of the welcoming party. We do not know if Marsek Sasikov, Raimjan's father, is among them. But the family has yet another story, which is also associated with the emperor. Wealthy merchant Sasikov was fluent in Russian and proved a tremendous help with the military units arrived from St. Petersburg. A year later, a messenger came to the village. And he said, "Pack your bags, Marsek. Get ready for the trip. You're going to St. Petersburg. You have been summoned by the emperor." He was confused and frightened. What would the emperor want me with? Have I done something wrong? Have I said something wrong? Do they want to put me in jail? So he said goodbye to all his neighbors and fellow villagers. But everything ended well. The sovereign presented him with an expensive fur coat as a reward for his excellent service. And he said, "Is there anything you want? Do you want money, cattle, or anything else?" And he replied, "I do not need anything. I have everything I need. I only have one dream, for my children to study in Russia. I dream of them studying here, in the capital. My eldest son wants to become a lawyer." And the emperor agreed. This is how, by the highest decree in 1899, Raimjan Marsekov was admitted in the ranks of students. He enrolled in the Faculty of Law at the Imperial University of St. Petersburg. He liked the theory of state and law. He got good grades in financial law and civil law. He chose subjects that would later prove invaluable in his judicial career and human rights advocacy activities. At the time, the concept of student was quite different from the modern connotation. The student was a special socio-anthropological type and a unique state of existence. The rebellious student body of St. Petersburg University participated in the student movements. Marsekov was one of the participants who attracted the attention of the gendarmerie. As a result, they were expelled from the University of St. Petersburg due to their affiliation with the student protest movement. He was later readmitted to the university. Graduating in 1902, he went on to become one of the first Kazakh lawyers with a university degree. With his students' fervor burning hot, Marsekov returned home. There were a lot of romantics among them. That was the time of romantics. Revolution is invariably efficient at unveiling the heroes, the romantics, or the selfless people who rise to the challenge and say, "We will do right by our country, we will create something good for our people, or we'll die trying." Chapter 2. Under the Sign of Time. The time of high goals, time to stretch one's mind and show one's strength. A new wave of recent graduates of prestigious universities shook and stirred the steppe quite thoroughly. The movement of intellectuals dates back to 1905. That was the year Nicholas II issued his manifesto on the freedom of speech, education for foreigners and construction of schools with subjects taught in the official state language. For the first and the last time Russia became Europe, wrote Alihan Bukhanov in 1907. A cultural revolution started to gain momentum in the steppe, as was evidenced by the publication of the first magazine Aykap and first Kazakh newspaper Kazakh with a circulation of 5,000 copies. Postal service was implemented across the empire, which greatly aided the spread of the print media. Marsekov was a staff writer who wrote frequently about forms of government. One can't help but note Japan is one of the more advanced countries, about the arbitrariness of the court. Recently, a resident of the Semipalatinsk district was held in prison for 4 months at the whim of a bee, raised the issue of land and explored Kazakh literature at length. He was one of the first people to break down the history of Kazakh literature into different periods. This is the mirror of the people. It reflects the customs of our nation, its individuality, its spiritual world. To date, Kazakh literature can be divided into 3 periods. The first period is the literature of ancient times, when there was no writing and words were passed by word of mouth. He linked the next period to Abay Kunanbayev, the great poet who coined new poetry styles, expanded the capacity of Kazakh poetry and raised it to the world level. The third period of literary development, according to Marsekov, began after Kunanbayev's death. They belonged to the first generation of intellectuals of the early 20th century. They were all educators. Midsummer in Orenburg, the first All-Kazakh Congress, the institutionalization of the party formed from former cadets, the one that had actually existed since 1905 but was formally established only in July 1917, the party Alash. When Alash Orda movement began, he was drafting documents on the constitutional and legal justification of the program with the utmost excellence and competency. Chapter 3. To be stronger than time. He had dreamed of such a congress back in 1913. The following issues were on the agenda: alienation of Kyrgyz land from migrants, appointment of a deputy to the State Duma and the Muftid institution. But it wasn't the Congress that the gendarme administration was interested in. Check data and report back was the order issued and signed by Major General Babich. Among the participants of the Congress, the following individuals are known: Remzhan Marsekov, lawyer, and Bakhidjan Karatayev, resident of the Ural region. These 2 individuals had sent an invitation to Bardybek Sirtanev, others are unknown. Bukhanov opposed the idea. He stressed that it was too soon and that they were not ready to hold such conventions. He believed the undertaking to be risky at the extreme and feared it would end in political repression and prosecution. Recognizing that people are still languishing in darkness and ignorance, and that only education could save the nation and direct people on the path of progress, the Congress believes that the idea of public education in a free country must be implemented with the primary purpose to improve people's lives. Public education is equally dear to all. Therefore, implementation of free universal education is of paramount importance. In 1917, the year of the revolution, Semipalatinsk, 5 education institutions, free medical care, veterinary care, and organization of the publication of newspaper Sararka. The main issue on the agenda, the autonomy, has been passed by a unanimous vote, but the final resolution of this issue was left to the All-Kazakh Congress. Marsekov was chairman of the Semipalatinsk Regional Kazakh Committee. He sent a telegram to the Petrograd Soviet of Workers, Peasants and Soldiers' Deputies. We propose to put on the agenda of the Constituent Assembly the issue of autonomy in the national borderlands of the Russian Empire. Including the Kazakh people. The time of concentrated hope and upheaval. The country is ravaged by the civil war. Everything changes in a matter of months. In 1918, Marsekov was elected chairman of the Semipalatinsk District Council. Many of the documents have been preserved. Around the same time, he served as the commander and organizer of Alasha, National Militia Detachment. Until 1922, Marsekov worked as an instructor auditor at the Semipalatinsk Region Executive Committee, until the appointment of Chairman Nikolai Yezhov. The latter would go on to become People's Commissar of Internal Affairs, responsible for the organization of all repressions in 1937. Yezhov, the Iron Commissar, the Bloodthirsty Dwarf. These are some of the nicknames that would later be assigned to the man who replaced Marsekov. Times were changing, and so were the people. What prompted Raimjan's hasty departure remains a mystery, but one thing is clear: he was unable to come to terms with the Bolshevik regime. There was a group photograph with several people in it: Ahmed Baytursinov, Mirza Abdulatov, and some others, with Marsekov heading the group. A piece of paper yellowed with age. This photo was taken in China, according to one version. Full of hope for the better future, they came to help the Chuguchak Kazakhs. It was circa 1918. With them they brought money, food and hope. He did not yet know that he would end up spending his last years in Chuguchak. A quiet and unhurried life of a provincial town. As soon as the motorcycle noise dies down, time itself seems to slow down. The 1920s. Xinjiang is experiencing a wave of migration. Chinese towns on the country's border with the Soviet Republic. On the streets, the sound of Chinese language is mixed with Kazakh and Russian speech. People are fleeing the turmoil and terror, and everyone has their own story to tell. A contact helped him to get in touch with his grandmother. He sent her a note asking her to meet him in a certain place and at a certain time. But his attempts to bring his wife over were unsuccessful. Fleeing from repression, Gulnaz left for Almaty. She was traveling light. All her property had been confiscated. She only managed to take a few pieces of jewelry, which she hid in her clothes. She would cut them into pieces and sell them bit by bit every day in order to buy something to eat. This is how she survived and didn't die of hunger. She awaited news from her husband. But as soon as her granddaughter got the news a few decades later, Raimjan was arrested in 1937 in China. He was arrested and thrown in jail. There is a version about him having been caught and brought to Kazakhstan by the United States political administration. Supposedly he was convicted and executed by a firing squad here. But I have never come across any credible documents confirming any of this. The date of his death is unknown. Those who have shared the fate of the people, their time has passed, and only the memory remains, for they are stronger than time. Raimjan Marsekov.